everyone, it's Melissa. Today I'm going to do a video kind of looking back at some of the styles and the way we were in the when I was young. I was born in 1955. So the late 60s, I was, getting in my teenage years, and then the early 70s. By 76, I'd had a baby, but the early 70s, that's when I was, in my 20s and late teens. So on Instagram a few weeks ago, I was talking to some of you all and did a few stories on the things that we had in the 60s and 70s that was just so crazy. I think it was a time, especially the 70s, a decade that was just such, the fashions, everything was just so wild. So I thought I would take a look on that, back on that, because we just really had so much fun talking about it. So I thought I would talk about some of the things that you all on Instagram had talked to me about too, and things that you all remembered. So get your water and your cup of coffee and settle in, and we'll have a little talk about it. And what I'll do is I've gone back over my photo albums and I'll insert pictures of things that I found, pictures of, the styles and stuff that we had in our home. So here we go. So first, shag carpet. This is carpet. For you all that don't know, and probably most of you do, the people that watch me are, pretty much my age. But remember shag carpet. This was carpet that, to make it look nice, you raked it with a rake. And I remember I had a rake, an actual rake that I used to rake my shag carpet with. And so at night I worked in the morning or went to school. So at night I would rake my shag carpet. And the apartment that I lived in, this is after I graduated high school, this was in 73. The apartment that I lived in when we were living when my husband was going to school, it was gold. The shag carpet was gold. Now you would have, and by the way, that decade, the 70s, it was like the season of autumn threw up all over it. Everything was browns and golds and rust and oranges, different shades of oranges, the burnt siennas, the ochres, the beiges, everything that had to do with fall and that warm season threw up all over the 70s, and all over your house, all over your clothes, all over your makeup. I remember my makeup, this was my makeup, was a warm brown eyeshadow that I would smudge underneath my eyes to make them look bigger, and then just a one shot of eye look. And then I would put I'd put yellow. I'd put yellow up here on the brow bone and yellow underneath here. And my lipstick was like a burnt sienna. It was a deep, it was a brownish kind of orange. And my blush was brown, kind of a brownish orange too. So that was my makeup, and all my clothes, my bell-bottom pants and everything were like, I remember I had these orange bell-bottom pants. These orange bell-bottom pants that I just thought were so cool. But anyway, your shag carpet, that was the number one thing. And the people that had green shag carpet to make it look like grass was growing in your house, well, y'all, those people were just a little bit fancier and had a little more, they were a little more high class, because they had the green shag carpet that looked like you were bringing nature in. And I remember, I'm terrible with plants, but we had plants all over the place, and we had fig trees growing inside. Do y'all remember the fig trees that we had growing inside? So the shag carpet was my number one thing that we all remembered. And then to go with your lovely shag carpet, you had your appliances that were the color of autumn of fall. So you had your gold appliances. Oh, and they would be trimmed in a little bit, maybe in a brown on the outside, well, like it was a gradient, a little bit darker on the edge to make it, look a little fancier. And so you would have gold, you would have avocado green, that was the name of it. You had a brown that I think was called burnt sienna. and then you had an orange. I can't remember with the orange, but maybe it was just called orange. But those were the main colors of your appliances. So you would have a dishwasher, and you hoped that they matched, but sometimes you would have to have, you know, like an avocado green refrigerator and a burnt sienna dishwasher. And then, no, mainly the stoves, I think a lot of the stoves were burnt sienna, so it'd be brown, so your dishwasher might be gold. So you would have some type of a mix match, but you would try to match it as you could. I remember my mother's advice was, you know, try to get all your appliances in avocado green. That is really the color to have. So I would try to always look for avocado green appliances. So that would go with our shag carpet. Then our wallpaper in our kitchen and in our bathroom would have flowers like this big on it, and I think I do have some pictures of those. But we had these big flowers that just beautifully decorated the wallpaper. They would be in slightly brighter colors than your appliances. So they would have yellow. And I remember my mother always painted her kitchens yellow, always painted them yellow. But then you would have, you know, like wallpaper where it would have big flowers, and the flowers would be like kind of like big daisy type things. Well, I don't know if it was a type of flower that would be these colors, but it would be orange flowers or yellow flowers, or I remember orange and yellow and maybe a pink, you know, it would just be real bright like that. The wallpaper, oh, it was something else, let me tell you. Just a technicolor in your kitchen. it was amazing. Made you want to cook, I tell you. And speaking of cooking, I remember the meal that I would be the most proud of, that I would always cook when I wanted to impress my husband. And this is not Doug, this is my first husband. When I always wanted to impress my husband, or when we had, you know, company, this would be my fancy meal. It would be shake and bake chicken. If y'all remember shake and bake chicken, it would be, you would have this thing, you'd put chicken in it and you'd shake it and then bake it on a pan. A can of corn, macaroni and cheese out of the box. Yeah, that stuff was good. That stuff was real good. The macaroni and cheese, it had a powder, you know, that you sprinkle on. And then green bean casserole. That would be green beans, cream of mushroom soup, and the onion rings sprinkled on top of it, and then you would bake it. So that was my fancy meal. Maybe a Jell-O mold if I got real creative, but yeah, that was my company meal. And I want to go back a little bit to the 60s. My mother grew up real poor, and so appearances were really, really important to her. But for some reason, she got it in her head that made from scratch food was what poor people ate, and that processed food was the things that we needed to have. So she didn't think that real butter, you know, that's what she called it, real butter. She didn't think real butter was the high-class butter to have. You need to have margarine. That's what she called it. No, we're going to buy margarine. We're not buying, I'd say, oh, because I remember my aunt and uncle would always use real butter, and it tasted so good. I'd say, Mama, can we have, please, real butter? No, we can afford margarine. We're going to have margarine. So we'd always have margarine. Things like that, you know, was what we grew up on. But that in particular, the butter stood out for me. But anyway, getting back to the 70s and some of the things that we had. Macrame. I tell you what now, I could macrame like nobody's business. I had a big hoop that I hung up. I think I have a picture of it. And I would macrame around it, and then it would have like a little fringe around it. Then I had another hoop that I would macrame in that, and I think maybe I even had a third hoop. I'm not sure, but it was like a sunburst, you know, like a sun out of macrame. And I remember I made these tables. I made one for my father-in-law and I made one for our apartment. It hung over in the corner. You'd always hang in the corner. So it would hang down with, hang down from the ceiling. It would come all the way down. It would be a big round table with holes drilled, four holes I think drilled, and then I would macrame through it and then have your little thing that would hang, the little tassel that would hang that you would macrame from the bottom. So those were, my decorations. I remember I had a metal ladder, and I painted it bright yellow to go, over my gold shag carpet. I painted it bright yellow, and I painted little flowers on it, that probably matched my wallpaper some. And on each of the rungs of the ladder, I would put plants. So I did have that. I took a wall and hung baskets on it, and my mother did that too. And fans, like wicker fans, we would do that. And then if you went to the beach, you gathered all these shells. I remember we went to Sanibel and this was in 1976. We went to Sanibel and got bunches of shells, and we got mirrors, and we glued shells all around the mirror. And then we would get boxes and we would glue shells all around the boxes. So we decorated with lots and lots of shells from the beach. So we had that wallpaper, we had the shag carpet, we had the shells decorating everything, all the different color appliances, and the wallpaper, and the macrame. So that was very interesting. And I did not have one, but a lot of people told me they also had the macrame owl, and I think I can find a picture of it. My mother had this rooster that she did herself, made out of beans. And I don't know why she had a rooster made out of beans, but she loved that thing, and it was terrific. I know that we kept it for years until she finally, went to a different decor and did something else. But those roosters were just terrific, and I know several of you still have some of them that you hang in your kitchen. But the roosters made out of beans, I remember that. And I also remember, I'm going to go back to the 60s a little bit. My mother we had linoleum. Well, she decided that, you always had to wax everything too. So she would do two things to wax the linoleum. One of them was where you would wax as you would clean, mop and glow. Mop and glow, I remember that. So we did mop and glow, we'd mop it. But her big thing was, and she bought this with green stamps. If you remember green stamps, you would go to the grocery and you would, the amount of groceries that you bought, you would get stamps and you would put them in the book and then go to the store, the green stamp store, and you could buy things. You could buy nice things. So my mother bought, with some of her green stamps, she bought a wax thing to wax the floor with. So this was a machine that she would use to buff it. It was called a buffer. So she didn't wax the floor with it, she buffed it. So she would buff the floor, she would clean it, and then wax it, and then she would buff it out. Okay. And so that would sometimes be my job, would be to buff the floor. So you had to do it. It was kind of hard to control. You had to do it just right. If you got it where it was sitting upright, you had to do it at this angle, the handle. You had to do it at this angle like that. If you got it where it was upright like that, it went out of control. So it would take off across the room like that, and you would go around chasing it. So you had to be, that was my job, and I remember just being real careful because I had a horror that I would get it upright before I turned it off, and it would just take off going. That buffer was the bane of my childhood. I had to do it quite frequently, and it would just drive me crazy because it had a little light on it too, I remember. But just buffing those floors, and it was hard to control. It was just real hard to control. But I always worried about buffing the floor and it getting off on the wrong angle and then just taking off, because you couldn't stop it. You would have to go unplug it. So another thing that I remember is getting dishes and dish towels from the grocery store. And I remember, I think it would be like a Tide detergent. You would open it up and there would be a dish towel inside, so you could collect all your dish towels. And you could collect dishes. I don't remember exactly how it worked, but we did collect some dishes. I remember there would be a display out of one set of dishes, and I think it was with laundry detergent too. You would buy a certain amount of laundry detergent and you get a dish, you would get a plate. You could collect a whole amount of dishes to sit down, you know, for a sit down dinner if you wanted to. But I remember getting the plates at the grocery store and always seeing the display because I thought they were so pretty. I'm sure they were tacky as all get out. But I remember looking at those dishes and just thinking, oh, they're so pretty. I want those dishes so bad. Let's buy lots of laundry detergent to get those dishes. But anyway, so that was just kind of rolling around and flying around in my mind. We have been watching the Brady Bunch renovations, and it just really brought me back. I had done the Instagrams with talking to everybody about, you know, the 70s and the 60s and the things that we remembered about it. And then watching the Brady renovation, it just really took me back to that time period. And I also saw something the other day that some of it was the Jenner girl that's a model. Kendall Jenner, she was modeling some clothes, some 70s inspired clothes. So that sort of took me back a little bit. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for looking back with me. It was a lot of fun remembering things, and hopefully I've had started some pictures here. And I will talk to you in a couple of days. I'll get back to makeup in a couple of days. I just kind of wanted to reminisce a little bit. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days. Bye-bye.